Testing, 1, 2, 3. G'day there guys, Marky here, and welcome back to another episode of r/relationship advice. Hope you're having a good day, and with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn of the Barbie, and let's get right into it. Posted by user Am I the A-hole gifted school, titled, Am I the asshole for not sending my daughter to a different school district so she could be in gifted education? I have 3 kids, Michelle 7, Juliet 6, and Leo 2. Michelle and Juliet are in kindergarten and first grade at our local public school. Juliet, however, is very gifted. She came into kindergarten reading chapter books and was doing math at a 2nd grade level. She's obviously doing great academically, but struggles socially at her school for a couple of reasons. Firstly, she doesn't understand that other people's brains don't work like hers and tends to get frustrated when people take a bit longer to figure things out. Second, she's just a huge bookworm and would rather spend recess reading instead of playing with the other kids. Then she gets upset that she can't talk about her books with them. I was recently called into a meeting about Juliet with her teacher, the principal of her school, and the superintendent. They basically said that they don't have the resources to support Juliet in her school or any schools in the district, but there's a school 2 towns over specifically for gifted students from 1st to 10th grade. Then for the 11th and 12th grade, they have a building at a community college, and she would be taking college courses for high school and college credits. She would have to test into the school, but her school will provide the testing. The school sounds great for her, but it's close to 30 minutes away from her current school. It starts and ends 45 minutes later than her current school, so I'd still be able to get her and Michelle to school on time, but it would eat up at least 2 extra hours of my day, and I don't have that kind of time for school drop-off and pick-up. Nor do I have the patience to deal with a 2-year-old in the car for 2 hours per day. My husband works in the opposite direction and wouldn't be able to drop her off. We could ask my father-in-law. He sometimes drives the kids around for me, but I don't want to have him drop off and pick up 2 hours per day. My husband does not agree with me at all. He thinks I should be willing to make the drive for her and insists that I have the time because I'm a stay-at-home mum. I brought up the issue of having Leo spending that much time in the car, but he says that I could just have his parents babysit. I still don't think that it's worth the 2 hours per day that I would have to put in to take her to this school, so I went through with enrolling her in our local public school for next year, and my husband is furious with me for ignoring her social and academic needs. Am I the asshole for not enrolling her in the gifted school because it would take too much time to get her to and from school? I'm just going to go with yes, absolutely. You have more than enough capability and options to make this work, yet you refuse to do so. To the detriment of your child's social development, I do think that you're an asshole for doing that, yes. You have no other excuse besides not wanting to do it. The 2-year-old in the car is not an excuse. There are people there to babysit. Stop making excuses. You're the asshole. In the comments, Outrageously Penguin says, You're the asshole for just saying no outright when you do have options to make this work. You could at least have asked the in-laws if they'd be willing to help out, perhaps with a combo of rides and babysitting, and you went ahead and enrolled her in a different school against your husband's wishes? That's messed up. It sounds like you didn't even ask her at all either. This is her education that we're talking about. She might be a pretty young child, but the entire point is that she is advanced and not being challenged where she is. You are taking away the opportunity for her to actually learn and move forward in an environment that will challenge her, and instead, you want to leave her in one that's likely going to be boring and annoying, one where she doesn't seem to fit in with her peers either, and all because you don't want to drive a little more? Did you look into any type of transportation, ask about school buses for her or the other kids, see what other parents might be able to help out, or the in-laws you decided you didn't want to inconvenience without even speaking to? You're the asshole. At least pretend to try before you outright shut down this opportunity. PSA Warrior replies, Exactly. My mother ended up arranging for me to carpool with other kids and even teachers who lived nearby because we didn't have a car and the school was an hour away. OP isn't trying at all and doesn't care that her kid is going to be so bored she's going to stop paying attention entirely and end up falling behind as a result. So instead of a prodigy, she's going to end up with an angry and disillusioned dropout. OP doesn't want to waste 2 hours a day driving to a better school, but doesn't mind her child wasting 8 hours a day in a school that themselves say they don't have the resources to help her. You're the asshole. I think your point is spot on, and I want to make another. Opie is all concerned about sacrificing her time to the point where she is sacrificing her child. True. However, I'm not convinced that Opie has all the information and is not really grasping what she is potentially doing to her child. If she really gets it and is still not wanting to make the effort, then it's my educated belief that she's willing to neglect her child's needs in a way that is not borderline abusive. It is straight up abuse. Yes, I said it, and here's why. There's a lot of anecdotal stories here from people who were intellectually gifted as children, as well as parents weighing in, and of course people will have a variety of experiences. I'm a retired academic and educator, high school and college, and as I'm old and tired, I'll keep it brief. In addition to having stories about genius children from my own family, I have had thousands of students over the years, but don't listen to me. The data, and there is quite a bit in several disciplines, completely holds up that kids with advanced intellectual abilities are far, far more likely to thrive when they are educated in environments where they are stimulated and supported, like most kids. Yes, of course, duh. But the needs of really smart kids are specialized, and the rewards versus risks are measurably and distinctly higher. There are literally, not figuratively folks, literally volumes and volumes on this, full stop. Opie, you're the asshole. I implore you to do your job as a parent. As your elder, I am telling you to get the F off your ass, educate yourself about how important this is, and get your goddamn kid the education she deserves. F&A, lady. One day back in the Mesozoic era, your daughter can probably explain when that was, by the way, I took my fancy education and I left high school to teach college students. Why? Because I couldn't deal with shitty, apathetic parents anymore. And now, onto the update. I found out that my husband took Juliet to get tested for the gifted school behind my back, and she got in. After he found out that she was accepted, he let our housekeepers go. We have housekeepers come twice a week, and cancelled my gym membership to pay for a service to drive her to and from school, all without telling me. As a result of his actions, I'm currently staying with my parents, and we will be getting a divorce. Juliet will be starting her new school in July. It's one of those year-round schools, and my soon-to-be ex just had to tear our family apart to make it happen. I hope you're all happy with the outcome. In the comments, Extreme Chemistry 515 asks, so you want a divorce because your husband figured out the best way to help your child? You don't deserve your family. OP replies, he can't make decisions about my life without consulting me. Soulless Sultry Voice replies, you had all of your finances provided by your husband. You had housekeepers. You have a whole support system you could have called on to help get your daughter to the school that she needs to go to. And you weren't even willing to try that. Just like any other job where you refuse to do even the bare minimum, you were fired from this job. A job with better benefits than anything you'll find in the professional realm with an entry-level career. Now you're going to get a taste of how the majority of the world works to raise their kids because you got selfish and entitled with the vast amount of luxury and privilege you had. Now you're going to have to find a job, and you'll have to find out that it's very hard to find one re-entering the workforce that gives you all of the benefits that you need and will allow you enough income to pay for housekeeping twice a week, a gym membership, and childcare when you're out of the house working after you've paid your bills to keep a roof over your head and the lights on. Get ready for a dose of harsh reality. Leopard Eater replies, nah, she's not going to learn a thing. She's not going to fight for custody of her children. She will either dump them with dad or try for custody to then dump them on her parents. She will threaten the parents that they will never see their grandchildren again unless they pay for her lifestyle if she's successful in getting custody. OP, you're one of the most selfish people I have ever had the displeasure of coming across. As a fellow stay-at-home mum, let me spell this out for you. It is literally your job to take care of your children. Do you even have to do any housework if you have 2 housekeepers? So literally all you have to do is take care of your children. Grow the hell up and give your children what they need. Have fun in your divorce trial. You'll lose. That's where you are headed. You royally screwed up, super massive big time. You are an entitled, stuck-up, selfish person in the highest possible degree. I can't at this time recall even a remotely close similar individual as bad as these traits that you are. So let me paint you a picture. Not only would this message be a hellish lot more cruel, crude, obscene, and horrible if I had a free rein to express myself away from the rules, which I don't think I'm following very well, but I hope I do get leniency for, but this is spread to other websites and across the globe. You were universally disliked, to be very, very nice about it. I would like to include the word loathe, so you know how high it goes. There are not few others who had similar situations growing up, some recent and some multiple decades ago, as some are old grandmas now, who wrote about this and were not happy regarding this or their own situation. One that had a mother in a very similar situation said almost verbatim that they hated their mother with every fiber of their own being. This seems to be the circumstances that you are rushing towards, just much worse. I don't want you back in status quo again, but for the children, I kind of do perhaps. So if you are lucky and still have a husband that loves you and can forgive your transgressions in tantrum, which I suspected is not the first, you might have a semblance of a good life. Otherwise, well, let's just say FAFO. I feel like these people just took the words right out of my mouth. I'd love to know what you guys think of this wonderful story in the comments down below. Our next post is by user FarConnection6368, titled, "My mother refuses to give me back my 9-month-old son." As stated in the title, my mother is outright refusing to give me back my son. To keep it short, she offered to watch him for a few days while I was sorting out a move across states, Florida to Texas. The move came around sooner than expected, and all hell broke loose. It's been a nightmare since my pregnancy, but I digress. I'm not currently in Florida, I'm in Texas sorting things out. My husband is down in Florida though, so I asked him to pick up our son from my mum's. For more than one reason, one being my mum is a narcissist, and she had been calling me with really concerning behavior. She then refused to hand him to my husband, reasons being, we are making a mistake, don't take him from me, you are horrible parents. I do not want my son to be there. The cops were called and they informed us that they couldn't do anything because it wasn't their department, so they couldn't just grab my son and hand him over. Is that really it? What can I do to get my son back if the cops won't do anything? They told me that we could take it up with the family courts, but we will, 1, not be able to afford that, and 2, not be able to stay in Florida for a case to begin with. My son is only 9 months old. I really don't want to have to put him through that. Is there any possible other way to proceed? In the comments, N8HBL says, I am a lawyer, not your lawyer, this is not legal advice, etc. Okay, you are dealing with a moron/lazy cop. The normal speech is, this is a custody matter and that is not a crime. Talk to a supervisor and file charges, this is likely a crime. Here's the statute on custodial interference. This is 100% a crime in Florida and most states really. Relatives don't have a special not kidnapping exception in any state's law. The cop made the ignorant assumption that the both of you have a claim to this child. She or he didn't want to deal with it, so be it. Mad Skills replies, yeah, she needs to explain that the grandma has zero legal custody, she was just babysitting. I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds like the cop is confusing this situation with that of a divorced couple who has an agreement to custody. That's not the case here. She doesn't have a custody agreement, she can't just keep him. Call the cops again and ask for a supervisor. Just wow, Florida. Sadie Boohoo asks, why didn't your husband just take his child? This makes no sense. Something is missing. And OP replies, my stepfather had threatened physical violence if my husband got near. The cops also said that it'd be considered trespassing if my husband got near the house. Jolly Green Spartan says, and then husband harms OP's mum, or she claims she was harmed and gets charged with assault? OP says, if anyone gets hurt in general. My siblings are also living with them as well, so if anything happens to them, it'd be a whole other situation. My family can and will get physical if anything sets them off. We're trying to not let it come to that. Was your husband warned to stay away from the property before all of this? OP replies, he was. He called my parents before getting there to let them know that he was on his way and to please have everything ready. During that phone call was when my stepfather threatened him to stay away or he would get physical. Well, at that point, your husband should have just called the police and tell them that he is picking up his child, he has legal custody, and his in-laws have physically threatened him and he would like their presence. And now, onto the update. I have goodish news. My son is back home. I landed in Florida at around 12 a.m. I wanted to go straight to my mother's house and grab my son, but many advised against it, so I waited anxiously until later in the day. Before getting there, she called me on the phone. I tried to get her to message me instead, but she refused and talked over me. She informed me that she was going to give me my son, but to not be too happy. She said she's going to call the courts on Monday to tell them that my son was going to be unsafe. She is hard set on believing something terrible will happen to him in our care. I'm not sure why. When we picked up our son, all of his things were ready, as I requested, so I was glad. One of my sisters was recording. I'm thankful she was, because you can clearly hear my stepfather hurl insults and threats at us in the background. The whole time my family kept giving us dirty looks. My middle sister even threw some of the items at my husband. We left quickly after that. Very little words were exchanged. My family soon messaged me after, trying to make me feel bad for making my mother cry. They sure weren't worried when I was crying over my son practically being held hostage. I'm trying to prepare myself for a possible CPS visit. All our stuff is packed away in boxes, so I'm not sure if that's okay or how it'll work out. By the time we got home, it was too late to call the sheriff's office, so I'll be calling them in the morning to file a restraining order against my mother and stepfather. My husband also wants to sue them for essentially kidnapping our son, but we're still in the process of dealing with everything else. I'd like to thank everyone who gave me their advice on how to deal with the situation, and all the good wishes were greatly appreciated. It really helped me keep a level head. A few things I should have probably mentioned in the original post. 1. We are people of color. I feel like you'll be able to understand what I mean. My parents also don't speak English very well. 2. My husband is biologically and legally my son's father. And 3. My mother has zero custody of my son, and neither does my stepfather. These were just common things that got brought up in the comments, so I just wanted to clarify. We still have 6 days left in Florida. A lot of things could happen in that time period. My mother has no evidence whatsoever to back her claims though, so I'm not extremely worried, I'm just nervous. I wish I could understand what's driving her to act this way, but talking to her is near impossible. And now onto the final update. Freedom at last. I am finally free from my mother's and stepfather's tyrannical rule. It is extremely bittersweet. I'm so used to having to depend on my mother for every single thing, big or small. There will be no more yelling, no more hitting and throwing, no more manipulating. I've gone no contact with my mother's side of the family. They're all just as messed up. I was able to reconnect with my biological father, and Lord, the stories he's telling me. I still jump at closing doors, car beeps, footsteps, and arguing, but I'm working on it. I'm working hard, not only for me, but for my new family as well. They need me present for them, and that is what I'll do. I am better than the trauma that my mother inflicted on me, and I will work twice as hard to never have my son experience what I did. I can say with slightly shaky confidence that I am free. In the comments, No Definition says, "Kidnapping isn't the cops' department? What the hell are they there for?" I posted this in another sub yesterday, but I think it belongs here too. I grew up in an abusive household in an upper middle class neighborhood. Called the cops more times than I could count, begging for help, and they did nothing. No CPS follow-ups, no investigation, just, you're related, so this is a civil matter, and you need to figure this out amongst yourselves. Despite the fact I was like 11 years old and directly telling the cops that showed up that I feared for my life. I went back to my hometown a few years ago and got attacked by my abuser again, this time as an adult. When I asked to press charges, the officer I talked to said that I should sleep on it because we're related and refused to do the paperwork because his shift was ending and it was a Friday of a long weekend. Cops are useless. Edit to add, quote, "I still jump at closing doors, car beeps, footsteps, etc. This is so important. PTSD doesn't just come from war. When you've grown up around fits of rage, violence, or other traumatic environments, that stuff doesn't just go away when you move out. Neural pathways in our brains physically change as a result of trauma, and it is hard to set them right again. But all the work is worth it to get yourself back, for you and the people you love. I know it doesn't help now, but if you ever find a cop telling you that they won't handle the issue, then you become the issue. Request the next level up. Keep requesting up the chain until someone takes you seriously. Inform them that you will be more than happy to have your lawyers address this with them on your behalf if they won't file your report now. Even if you don't have a lawyer, they don't need to know that. Cops will take the laziest option available to do the least amount of work. Make dealing with you and filing the report the laziest option available. Once they realize that you aren't going away, you do know your rights, and you are more than willing to follow up on this, they suddenly become much more agreeable to filing that report. If you have the time to spare, call around until you find the number for complaints to Internal Affairs. External Affairs is better if the department has it, but not all have one. And file a complaint about the officers that refuse to help you. Get their badge numbers, names, and keep records of who you spoke to, when, and the outcomes. You won't see immediate justice, but after enough of these reports stack up, the department finally starts to see some consequences for their inaction. Personally, I'm glad that things worked out for OP and they were able to get the hell away from that abusive family. I do like including comments like this because I feel like, these are perspectives that could help people that don't realize these are options for them. I personally don't like dealing with the police myself, but my mother was a lawyer, and this is exactly what I've come to expect from her. I used to cringe at how she would always ask for the next person up and scream at people when they weren't helping her, but it works surprisingly well. Just do it the right way and be respectful about it. Anyway, what do you guys think of this one? What's your hot take? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next post is by user AnyWolf134, titled, "Am I the asshole for telling my sister that a comment she made is exactly why her marriage crashed and burned? My sister has been staying with my husband and I, men in our late 20s, for the last week and some change. She and her husband have initiated the divorce process, and she said she doesn't want to stay alone right now, which I completely understand. It would be very hard to go from living with a partner to a completely silent house. I opened our home to her before I found out why her marriage didn't work out. Now that the two of us have had multiple conversations about it, I'm a little uncomfortable. There was no infidelity. There was no big scandal. What she told me is that her husband wasn't having sex with her enough. The things she has been saying have floored me. She says without sex, the two of them were basically just like roommates. She said she had been pushing for him to get a hormone imbalance test done because while they were still having sex, it wasn't enough. She said he had begun resisting even normal touches from her because from his perspective, all she thought about was sex, which apparently isn't true. I'm not sure I believe that. I can elaborate in the comments, but overall, it just left me feeling sad for her ex and the disrespect of saying sex is the only thing that separates a partner from a roommate, not even a friend. I've done my best to be supportive, but I can't relate to the thought process at all. If my partner told me that he wasn't up for sex for the next few weeks, months, or longer, I would just take care of myself and respect that. I love him, and I want him to be the person I do life with forever. This all came to a head last night. My husband and I were having a typical lazy Saturday night, catching up on some shows, and chatting while we lounge on the couch. His legs were in my lap, and I was kind of absent-mindedly massaging his feet and rubbing his ankles. This was an innocent gesture. My sister came in, saw me doing it, and made a joke along the lines of, "Ah, OP, I didn't know you were into feet," or "I didn't know you had a foot fetish." The exact wording escapes me. I couldn't help but feel put off at her sexualizing the gesture. Intimacy can be sexual, but it doesn't have to be. I told her so, and then said, referring to her divorce, "You sexualizing every interaction is why you're in the situation you are now." She called me a dick and left the room. I already know that it was a little harsh, but I'm unsure if it was tough love or too much. Am I the asshole? Edit, I appreciate everyone's recommendation, but I do not like the dead bedroom subreddit. See my comment here where I elaborate on why. I did venture on that subreddit after I saw the term mentioned here a few times. Unfortunately, I was not very sympathetic to the rhetoric being presented there. One of the first posts I saw said, "Which is worse, withholding sex from your partner or cheating?" And someone responded by saying one causes the other, which should tell you which is the most severe. So, pretty disheartening to read that. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully understand the positions of the people there, because I don't think not being in the mood is ever a punishment, and I also think cheating is one of the most cowardly things that someone can do. I agree that lack of intimacy is a huge problem in a relationship, but sex is not the only intimacy there is, and it seems that so many sadly think otherwise. I'm not on the side of OP on this one. I think that what she was saying was a joke, and she wasn't sexualizing the situation. I think you're just picking a fight, OP, and I think you're an asshole for doing that. Like, yes, inherently, the wording of the joke is sexualizing the interaction. But foot fetish, funny. I think you taking the wording literally and not for the joke that it was makes you an asshole, and then turning that on her and her marriage took it up a notch where it didn't need to go. Is it so crazy that some people process hard times like this by making jokes of it, making light of the situation so that they can help move forward? I don't think it's so crazy, but I do think that you escalating the situation and taking it to a place that it didn't need to go to was crazy, and I think you should apologize for that. I think you're the asshole. In the comments, Purple Dragon says, not the asshole. That is a weird thing to say to your sibling, and thinking every time you touch your partner it has to be for sexual reasons is screwed up. You probably could have been nicer, but that's a weird thing to say. It seemed like a joke. Could have been nicer? He told his sister that she deserved her life falling apart. I'm not sure he could have been much meaner. Did you miss the part of the post where OP says him and his husband are both men in their 20s? Lol. If it was said in a joking manner, I doubt the post would be here. Everyone sucks here. It's weird that your sister made a comment that sexualized her brother. That's effing strange. However, why did you have to bring her failed marriage into it? She confided in you, you didn't agree, and you threw it in her face. There are so many ways you could have expressed your concerns about her reasons for her divorce without attacking her. Honestly, the foot thing sounds like a joke, and OP kinda sounds like a tight ass to begin with. OP kinda sounds like they're trying to justify having a low libido. High libido is fine, low libido is also fine. Matching libidos is really the key to a satisfying sex life in marriage. How is OP's sex life at all relevant? Wouldn't you also be annoyed if your partner never wanted to cuddle or be intimate without being sexual? Even as someone with a really high libido, I'd be so annoyed. My partner and I will lay like the grandparents in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and rub each other's feet while watching TV. It's not sexual at all, and that level of comfort and caring is really what makes a relationship different from friends and roommates, in my opinion. OP's sister's inability to see that is exactly what ruined her marriage, and OP might be an asshole for saying it out loud, but he's not wrong. Well, we don't know that she never wanted intimacy without sex. We know that that's OP's assumption after a handful of conversations and one misguided joke. Since he doesn't have a shred of evidence that it's true and not just what he thinks, it seems naive to completely write off the possibility that he's exaggerating to justify demonizing her high libido because they value sex differently in marriage. Info: did she ever try to coerce her partner for more intimacy? Seems like we're missing some context if he started recoiling at her touch. That is a huge reaction that doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Honestly, sexual incompatibility happens in relationships. Sometimes one partner has a high libido and the other has next to no libido. Neither are in the wrong, and both are valid reasons for ending the relationship. Your sister isn't in the wrong for just having a high sex drive. And OP replies, I don't think that there was any direct coercion, at least from what she's told me. She said that she was feeling very rejected because she was trying to initiate a lot and he wasn't receptive except for about once a week, and that she would drop it without pressuring him after he gave non-verbal "I'm not into it" cues or said no. However, I do find the line between coercion and expressing desires to be particularly fine in situations like these. In my past experiences with breakups, there are usually multiple conversations leading up to the main event that took place. How do you properly initiate a conversation where the main takeaway is, if you don't start sleeping with me X times a week, I'm leaving, without it sounding at least a little bit like coercion? I don't know. I think that I would be more forgiving if this was a dating breakup and not a marriage one, since these problems have occurred their entire relationship past the first few months apparently. Edit: change some wording to clarify the two of them were seemingly having sex about once a week. I had unintentionally made it sound like he was always turning her down, which isn't the case from what I've been told. I think you're being unfair to your sister and that you're making a lot of assumptions. Why do you assume the conversation went, if you don't have X amount of sex with me, I'm leaving, when it could have gone, I'm not feeling loved or valued in this relationship because our physical intimacy isn't at a place that makes me feel loved or valued. Is there something that we can do about this? You could even flip it if we wanted to, with equally unfair assumptions. Isn't it coercion to tell your partner that you'll work on being more physically intimate when you don't intend to, just to keep them in the marriage? How do we know that he wasn't just constantly promising to do more and never following through? Unfair assumptions swing both ways, which is why judging others based on them hurts everyone involved. Anyway, guys, that's getting a bit heated. I think that's where I'm going to end today's episode. Let me know what you thought about this one down in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.